Dayna Thompson here, co-chair of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee for the International Planetarium Society alongside Danielle LeBlanc here. So we want to start this presentation just with a overview or a reminder of what exactly EDI is, because we're going to be talking about EDI a lot during this presentation. And it, of course, stands for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We just heard an amazing talk earlier today on accessible technologies in the Dome by Mark Watson and David Hurd. And so this goes alongside that. There was a lot of great conversation about that, but we want to build on that conversation and bring it in the context of the IPS. So as an overview, equity is an approach that ensures everyone has access to the same opportunities. It recognizes that advantages and barriers exist, and that as a result, we don't all start from the same place. So equity is about fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people. So identifying and eliminating barriers so that that can happen. For diversity, it's just the presence of difference within a given setting. And a team can be diverse, and so can an organization. But usually we don't identify a person as diverse. We recognize that they're a unique and individual person. There's a lot of complexities in them as an individual. But in order to have diversity, you kind of have to have a lot of people. And a lot of people nowadays are talking about something called diversity story. So understanding your own background and diversity, and then that helps you understand and connect maybe, and maybe not connect with others better. So just diversity is the presence of difference within a given setting. Inclusion is about creating a welcoming environment that embraces differences and offers respect in words and actions for all people. And it's important to note here that while an inclusive group is by definition diverse, a diverse group isn't always inclusive. And sometimes it helps just to see these as graphics. So for equity here, you can see the difference between it and equality. For diversity, we have a graphic here that's showing difference within these individuals. And our definition of diversity also includes the diversity of ideas and thought. And inclusion is a little bit more difficult to translate into a graphic, but here you can see that there are people here from different backgrounds, and they are sharing ideas. And most importantly, their ideas are being heard and valued. And I just want to pause here for any questions on what these terms might mean. Do these mean maybe different things to you where you're at in your region? Or does anyone have any reflections on these terms here? And if you do, you can put them in the chat. And while you're considering that, or maybe just reflecting on these different terms, you can also think about, why is EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, important to you? We're going to be reflecting on this and expanding on this question a little bit later. So hang on to any comments for now, or put them in the chat. We don't want to lose that important information. All right, so basically what we're here as IPS committee is that we're committed to supporting and fostering healthy relationships, conflict resolution, and that's nonviolent conflict resolution, and a strong community. And it takes a whole team to do this. We have a team of dedicated, passionate people, and we could always use more voices though. And so we're going to invite you now to join our team, but we're also going to invite you a little bit later on. And Danny, go ahead.
Thank you. So the team, we have been a standing committee for about 9 months, and what we we're going to talk a little bit about what we do and what we've done and what we're working on now. But I just want to remind everybody that what we do as planetarians and what we do within IPS around equity, diversity, and inclusion has two sides to it. There's the inward-facing side. There's the side that we, really want to make our organization as welcoming and inclusive and enable all of our members to fully benefit from what IPS offers, and then to contribute equally and equitably to the growth of the organization. So we really want to be a place where people can thrive and belong and be engaged and be valued. And already we're a very supportive environment. I think that we all agree. We can see it in the chat. It's reflected in all of our even just willingness to share the work that we do and help others along with us. But I think we also recognize that there's always ways that we can be doing better. So that is what our committee is trying to help us to find, discover those ways that we can do better. And how can we recruit and strengthen our membership and grow the next set of planetarians? The other side of it is that we are all planetarians and educators, and we also, interact and impact our communities and our regions that we're in. So there is the outward facing side of our work. And as an organization, we want to be able to provide all of the IPS membership with those tools that they need to be able to do that for their communities and to help their own institutions and whatever line of work we do as planetarians, make sure that it represents all of the people that we serve. Dayna created this really amazing logo for us and for the work, and what it really captures well. So the colors and the graphics each represent a different facet of the work that we do as the IPS committee. And then also, of course, within the IPS itself as the extension of that. And what this graphic really represents is just the interconnectedness of all of those pieces. So each facet, each goal that we have responds to and in turn informs the rest of the work that we do. And so, yes, there's a lot more to each of those elements. This is sort of the overarching look, but then each of these goals has a list of objectives in what we've called and developed our inclusive excellence plan. And so there's many pieces to each of these goals, but again, they all respond to each other, and they're also in this fluid circle where they all can respond to the times and to the things that are needed in that moment. So goal one, I'll just do this real quickly, and then we're going to do a deep dive with some of our other panelists. But goal one is really about creating that overall sense of culture and welcoming culture and welcoming climate of inclusion. And so things like a climate survey that you'll hear a little bit more about in a moment. Goal two is about our policies and procedures and systems. We really wanted to provide IPS with a place for members to go when they have concerns or they want to comment on anything that's happening anonymously or confidentially. Inclusive conferences and events, something that we're going to dive into a little bit. How can we make our conferences as inclusive and accessible as possible? And I think it was mentioned earlier today, just the existence of this ability to virtually participate already opens up a lot of possibilities around that, but there's other things too that Ryan will get into in a moment. And then the idea of recruiting and retaining the next generation of planetarians. We're trying to think about ways that we can grow membership in collaboration and communication with the membership committee. But how can we, spread the word that planetarium work is a possibility for those just entering the workforce and the industry? And how can we make it appealing to them to join and to bring them in as part of our community? And then all of the opportunities of the outward facing side, professional development, for inclusive excellence, providing those opportunities again so that people can take these strategies back to their communities and know that they're not alone in figuring these things out. We can move. Yeah, so, and then just to define a couple additional terms that we use a lot and we'll continue to use a lot is just the culture and the climate. They are two different things. The culture is, you can think of it as the way that we do things around here, the way that things are, and the climate is how the people within it feel. Most of the time we want these things to be aligned, but sometimes they're not. And that's one of the charges of the committee is to investigate, are they aligned, are they not aligned? And if they're not aligned, how can we help them get back aligned? These are some of the things that we've done. I think I'm probably out of my time, so I'm going to just very briefly, we mentioned some of the things, the code of conduct, the system for suggestions and comments, the creation of this roadmap with short-term and long-term goals for the committee and for IPS, and a couple things that you're going to hear about in a moment. And then what are we working on now? We've got a lot of sort of projects that are happening that you're going to hear about in a moment. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, who's going to talk about the climate survey that she and her subgroup has been developing.
All right. Hello, everyone. So I'm Shannon Schmoll. I'm at the Abrams Planetarium at Michigan State. A couple of years ago, we actually hosted the GLIPA conference, the Great Lakes Planetarium Association, and we included an implicit bias training. And our facilitator was asking us about the demographics of our field, as well as just the general culture and climate. And we didn't have any answers for her. So we wrote very quickly a climate survey that we sent out, and we got about 100 responses that we were able to use for that. But right now we took that and we modified it quite significantly for IPS. And the goal of this survey is to ask people sort of their opinions on how inclusive IPS is and how they feel being a part of the IPS community, as well as demographic questions so that we can get a sense of who we are. And the idea is that we will sort of send this out into the IPS community every 5 years or so to see how we are doing in actually reaching our first goal here of culture and climate of inclusion. The survey itself, we expect will take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. We have written it in English, so it is now more or less done in English. And thanks to my subcommittee and the whole EDI committee and the board for reviewing that. We've gotten a lot of really great feedback on how that works and how we ask the questions. We are hoping to translate it into several other languages to make sure that we are being inclusive and making sure that this goes out to our members so that it is in languages outside of English. So we're hoping that will be going out fairly soon. And so please keep an eye out. And when you see it, we would really appreciate it if you could take the survey and give us this feedback and information on how you feel within IPS. Another note about this particular survey is that it is IRB approved. So IRB is the Institutional Review Board. This is what all human subject research has to go through, education, everything from education to medical research. And what this will allow us to do is open up the data that we do receive for other people who might want to do research or need this information to go along with their projects. That said, this whole survey, we are in no way asking for identifying information. It is completely anonymous. We should not know who you are with your answers, but just in case, because sometimes in long answer questions, things might come up, I will be the only one who will ever see the raw data, and I will go through it and remove anything that is potentially identifying before it is shared with anyone, including other members of the EDI. So again, this will be going out fairly soon once we get a chance to translate it into several other languages. And when you see it, please take it. We would appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Shannon, and all your work with that. I think we're going to be hearing next from Ryan Wyatt.
Yes, so I wanted to address the topic of creating inclusive conferences. Of course, gathering that IPS sponsors every other year, as well as now the multiple channels that we're using to communicate, are one of the key ways that we engage with IPS members and with the community. So we wanted to look at how to create climate and culture that is as welcoming and inclusive of all participants as possible. So one of the key components of this was, as mentioned in an earlier slide, a conference site assessment tool, which is provided to all potential hosts of IPS conferences. This actually is broader than EDI concerns. It addresses many components, but EDI concerns and concepts are central and core to this document. So I think this is a great step forward to help organize thinking about conferences. And I think if we go to my next slide, an inspiration for some of this work was a guide to creating inclusive scientific meetings created by 500 women scientists. This is an amazing document. I highly recommend anyone who's organizing any kind of gathering to take a look at this, because it really addresses how to frame, because it's not just what happens at the conference, it's really preparing for the conference, organizing the conference, making sure that the event itself is run appropriately, and then following up to make sure that the objectives have been met. So a really amazing document from 500 women scientists that I highly recommend. So that inspired some components of the conference site assessment toolkit, but again, it's a little, that particular tool is a little broader than that. And then finally, as you may have noticed, anyone who's presenting, we did create a set of virtual presentation guidelines. So we kind of pivoted as we realized that we would be going to a VCon rather than an in-person gathering this year. And as there's been a discussion going on in chat, one of the examples that is actually listed in this set of guidelines for planning your virtual presentation is the ability to do closed captioning, which we're doing right now with Google Slides, but for example, PowerPoint does this as well. So these guidelines were simply something that as we looked at being able to create presentations that are as accessible to as diverse an audience as we have at the IPS VCon, we just wanted to offer some suggestions to that end. So all of this is ongoing work, and we certainly welcome input and ideas for how we can refine these concepts and move forward. But we're looking forward to supporting this with both in-person and virtual conferences going forward.
Thanks so much, Ryan. All right, so next we wanted to do some breakout discussions because I'm sure some people are eager to start chatting with one another. Again, it's been a little while since we had a break. So if you can remember that question that I put up from before, it's why is EDI important to you? Well, let's go a little bit deeper into that question with why is equity, diversity, and inclusion important to you at your institution or in your region? And before we go into our breakout rooms, which are going to be assigned by Michael Conville, our amazing tech who's been pushing through all of the conference so far behind the scenes. Thanks so much, Michael. Before we go into that, just a quick heads up that some of the conversations that may be discussed in your breakout rooms might contain sensitive information or some sensitive situations and topics, which might be difficult for some people to hear. Just a heads up on that. So I think we're good, Michael, right, Danny?
Yeah, I would say start out your conversation and, go around and do introductions. There's probably people in the room that you haven't met or seen before. And then, answer this question in the way that is, resonant with you. And then please be prepared to maybe share some of the comments in the chat. We're going to keep the chat as a record, and then we're going to review it as a committee. And if you've got anything that you put in there, suggestions, comments, ideas about how this is, maybe specific things that apply to your region that we may not know about, please put all that information in there, and then we can learn from all of you and hear all of you in our work going forward.
All right, we're ready to go.
14 hours UT. How long will the breakout last?
Got that. I got it to Michael. It's 9 minutes or 10.
Okay.
Michael, you have it at 10, so that's fine.
All right,
Thank you.
We're all set and ready to go.
Danny, if you got that, you can just hit later.
That's it. It's fun to watch the teleportation, the numbers going down.
I can't see it all because I have the micro view here. All right, if anyone's watching on Facebook, we're going to be talking about the question here in individual breakout rooms for about 9 minutes or so. So there's going to be a little bit of dead air. So hang tight, we're going to come back in about 9 minutes. Just a heads up, if you're joining us, we're answering this question that's displayed here on the screen in breakout room. So everyone's off in a breakout room on Zoom now. If you're watching live on Facebook or if you just joined us late in Zoom, that's what's going on. So we're going to be back and debrief on this question in about 5 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. How was that?
Really good.
Great. Okay, so I know we're close to time, if not at time. So we just have a quick wrap up, if we could. We want you to share some of your notes and comments in the chat if you have anything that came to your mind that you shared out that you want to share with everyone, or if you heard something that would be appropriate to share on someone else's behalf that you learned, that would be great to put in the chat at this time.
And just, this is ongoing work. I saw the comment in the chat about could have used a few more minutes. There will be more conversations. We want to keep this conversation going. There's always more. It's work that's never done. So, and there is another session on Friday that's related to our work as well. It's an anti-racism panel that that Dayna and I have behind the scenes helped to set up. It's an important panel. We're going to be hearing from about anti-racism from Black planetarians. These are issues that affect all of us all around the world, no matter where we are. So please join us for that on Friday at 12 o'clock UT. Continue to add your thoughts and inputs to the chat. Remember, we're going to keep that in our record so that we can review it and we can use that to help inform our work going forward for all of us. And then the last thing that we just want to say is please join. We would love to have more voices. We would love to have voices from all around the world, all regions, all affiliate zones representing their areas on the EDI committee. So please join us. You can email us to join. The email is below, edi@IPS, at planetarium or -planetarium.org. And then Dayna and I can be in touch with you and we can help you on board. And it is open membership. Anybody who would like to join is able to.
Yeah, and we actually already got an email, Danny, of someone who wants to join. So that was really great. And that EDI email does come directly to myself and Danny. And then we disseminate any information as needed to the rest of the EDI committee. But anyone who wants to join can. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat too. We'll try to do our best to handle them during this transition time to the next presentation. But you can also email them as well. And if there's anything that is sensitive in nature that you want to put in anonymously, there is a suggestion form online where you can do that. Thanks everyone so much for your time. And thanks so much for all this great dialogue going on in the chat. We are definitely saving this for later. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks